This is the Lew Rockwell Show.
Well, what an honor it is to have as our guest this morning Dr. Ron Paul. Ron, of course, the congressman from Texas, more important, the author of so many important books, most recently End the Fed, the man who, with his presidential campaign, and I might say his entire public life, has inspired millions of especially young Americans and young people all over the world for the cause of liberty and sound money, of peace, and of opposing the sort of runaway government that's happening in the U.S. right now. And Ron, first let's talk about the Fed. I mean, you, of course, have always been the key battler against central banking and against the Federal Reserve, Greenspan, Bernanke, and all of them. What's happening with your bill to audit the Fed?
Well, right now it's sort of in limbo. We got it into the reform package in the House. As bad as the package is, that's one item in that reform package that's worth something. In the Senate, we didn't get enough strong support over there, and the Republicans didn't really fight for it. And the Senate side, it is not included. Matter of fact, they have included Mal Watts' language, and his language and my language competed in the House Financial Services Committee, and of course we won that pretty easily. But they inserted that in, so Mal Watt and the bankers were able to influence the senators enough to put their language in there. So what probably will happen is the two bills will be passed. It'll be in one bill and not the other, and then the fight will be to put pressure on the conference to go with this House instead of the Senate.
You know, Ron, Mel Watt, of course, is known not as the congressman from North Carolina, but as the congressman from Bank of America. So he, of course, represents the banking industry. Obviously, the banking industry is benefited by the Fed. That's why they set up the Fed back so many years ago in Jekyll Island, Georgia, as you've talked about. So don't you feel, however, regardless of what these, how shall I characterize them, these gentlemen in Congress do with your idea of Fed transparency, don't you feel that it's been an incredible success already in terms of alerting Americans, engaging Americans, enraging Americans about this, what the central bank does, and how they want to hide it all?
Yeah, and I think regardless of what happens in a technical fashion with the legislation, we've won a whole lot. And besides, you know, if we got it passed, then we'd have to worry about whether the president's going to sign it, and then he probably would sign it with a signing statement and maybe never get carried out. But the other thing is the Fed would fight it in the court, just like they are fighting the Freedom of Information Act suits, even though they're losing a little bit there. I don't expect the Fed to give up easily. I could see them destroying records before a true audit would occur. But like you point out, the real benefit is the exposure of the Fed to the general public. And this is very, very healthy because I work on the assumption that we should do everything possible to slow this mess up, do what we can to make positive changes, but also work on the assumption that they probably are going to go ahead and drive us into bankruptcy with the destruction of the dollar and a lot more financial chaos. Then the more people that are informed, the more likely it is that we will resort to sound money and get people to understand why paper money doesn't work. So that's where we're making the progress. And as you know, the college campuses have come alive with this issue, and I know a lot more people are interested in studying Austrian economics. So I'm very pleased with what's happening outside of Washington. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the only thing that really counts ultimately.
You know, Ron, if I can make a personal note, like you, I've been interested in this issue for decades. And for the longest time when you would try to talk to anybody about it, well, the Federal Reserve, that was the name on the bill in their pocket, in their wallet. But otherwise, their eyes would glaze over and they were totally uninterested. They did not realize they were being ripped off. They didn't realize what it meant politically, constitutionally, economically. But building on the work of Mises and Rothbard and Hayek and Hazlitt and all the great Austrians, you have made people aware of it. So that today, you know, and I think back to that amazing time during your presidential campaign on the University of Michigan campus, where the kids all started chanting, "End the Fed, end the Fed."
Pretty good. The financial crisis certainly helped us, and this called attention to the people of how the bailouts occurred and how the Fed could create $2 trillion and pass it out and not even answer the questions to the Congress. But what do you think is going to happen when price inflation is roaring? I think there's still a lot of price inflation going on. They say there isn't, but I've always argued that there's a factor in the cost of medical care that pushes costs up too. So the inflation is around. So can you imagine, though, the attention we'll get if we have prices going up like they did in the 1970s? I think we will really get a lot more attention to the Fed, and that's healthy that we're directing attention to the proper place.
And, of course, this is why they're worried. This is why they don't like the tea parties. It's why they don't like the sorts of things that educate people about what the government is doing to them. We're all supposed to accept it. Now, here we have this, most recently, this Obamacare business,
right,
which has vastly expanded an already terrible federal intervention into medical care. What do you think lies ahead in that area?
Nothing good, because it's just going to compound our problems. The worst thing is, and the thing that I've always been concerned about, is the doctor-patient relationship, because I don't like anybody or anything to be between the doctor and the patient. The patient and the doctor should make the medical decisions, and they should be making the financial decisions. They lost the control of the financial decisions, and therefore they lost the control of the medical decisions. And this is going to get much, much worse. And I think the worst part of the bill is not so much what they're talking about. Well, they've talked about it some, but to me it's the worst thing is, and that is the elimination, not the elimination, but the undermining of the medical savings account where individuals can make some decisions. But now everybody is being forced. You don't have any choice in the matter. I argue that as bad as public education is, if a person is alert, there's still enough freedom left that you can homeschool your kids and go to a private school and you can study on the internet and still survive. But in medicine now, you're not going to have a choice. You have to obey the government, and everything the government, every insurance company will have to obey all the rules of the government, which means now you have the management companies, you have the drug companies, you have the insurance companies, and now you have the government bureaucrats and the politicians who are changing the rules all the time. They've all gotten in between the doctor and patient. This will discourage even more doctors. More doctors will leave. The quality of people going into medicine will be diminished, and the cost will go up. And the ultimate answer to this for the bureaucrats is, well, now the demand is too great. We'll have to ration the care, and all I can see is the quality of the care will continue down.
Ron, I know that with doctors, for example, who take Medicare, and I want to mention that in your career as a physician delivering more than 4,000 babies and many other things, doing many other things for your patients, you never took Medicare or Medicaid. You were responsible to the patient. You wanted to maintain that employee-employer relationship because, of course, the doctor is the employee of the patient in a proper and free market system, not Blue Cross or the government or whatever. But I'm wondering, since already it's very troublesome, maybe illegal, for a doctor who's taking Medicare to have private patients, are they going to make it illegal for any doctor to have private patients, to have an entirely private medical practice?
Probably, except for themselves, the politicians. You know, like in the Soviet Union, they always had a private doctor take care of them. So I don't think it's going to happen real soon, but that's liable to be what will happen. They will move in that direction, and of course that will be very unfortunate.